Hello everyone and welcome to Fun with Fitzy. Today we are going to be looking at 8.1, the 6-column worksheet. What is a 6-column worksheet and what does it look like? Well, here is an example of a 6-column worksheet. As you'll see, there's 6 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But it's very simple. As you see, the worksheet really just has a trial balance right here, which is a listing of accounts in ledger order, with their debit and credit balances with their totals. And this is to indicate that our ledger balances, remember? And then of course there's an income statement and a balance sheet as well, both with debit and credit columns. Remember, our income statement only has revenues and expenses, and our balance sheet has assets, liabilities, and then your two owners' equity accounts, capital and drawings. Okay, what is a worksheet? And why do we use it? A worksheet is an informal business paper used to organize and plan the information to prepare financial statements. It is not a financial statement. Okay, we know so far there are 4 financial statements: a balance sheet, an income statement, a statement of owner's equity, and a cash flow statement, which we will do in grade 12. Before we move on, it is really important that we talk about something called control accounts. A control account basically is a sum of all of the accounts of that type. So for example, the accounts receivable control account represents the sum of the balances of all the individual accounts receivable accounts. So if you think of a company like Bell Canada, they have hundreds and hundreds, thousands actually, accounts receivables. All of us owe them money, and if we were listed individually on their worksheet or the balance sheet, it would be ridiculous. So they just put one account, control account, called accounts receivable, with all of the amounts. And all of the accounts receivables are kept track of in a separate ledger, okay? And same thing with accounts payable. We just put the amount of all the accounts payables. Okay, step 1 to preparing a worksheet is to put your who, your what, and your when. And your when is similar to an income statement. You have to put for the time period because we actually have an income statement on it. Step 2, prepare a trial balance. We know how to prepare a trial balance. List all of your accounts in ledger order. That's assets, then liabilities, then capital, then drawings, then revenue and expense. Ledger order. We should know this by now. And list their corresponding debits and credits, their balances, and then total the debit column and the credit column, and those two should equal. Do your double underline there. That was the next step. Step 2. Step 3 then is going to be extend the balances to the appropriate statement. So again, we know that assets, here are all our assets, they go on the balance sheet, so they should go on the balance sheet. And they're debits, so they go in the debit column. We know liabilities, and we have a contra liability here, remember from last section, go on the balance sheet, so they go on the balance sheet. And so on. Capital goes on the balance sheet and drawings go on the balance sheet. Here and here. However, revenues and expenses go on the income statement, so we're going to put them here on the income statement. That's called extending your balances. Okay, you'll notice it's the exact same number, we've just moved it to the proper statement. Finally, the next step is to add up the totals in each column. So I'm going to take all of these debits and add them up and put the total here. I'm going to take all of these credits, sometimes you'll have more than one, add it up, put it here. All of these debits on our balance sheet, add them up, put it there, and so on. Notice that our balances don't equal. The $60,327.99 does not equal this $95,907, which makes sense because your revenue should not equal your expenses. So in order to get our worksheet to balance then, we need to subtract these like we're balancing a T account. The only difference is now we're going to put the answer, we're going to subtract this number from this number, and the answer is going to go on the smaller side. Unlike your T account, you put the answer on the larger side. Once you do that for both your balance sheet and your income statement, here, again, you're going to subtract this 66,000 from this 101,000, and you're going to put the answer on the smaller side. Notice that these two numbers equal each other. This is called a balancing figure. And if your balancing figure equals each other, your worksheet balances. If it doesn't, you've done something wrong. So, what also is the balancing figure? Well, we know that when we subtract our expenses from our revenue, we get net income, which is in effect what we did. We subtracted our expenses from our revenue, and we put the answer here. So this is our net income, and it's really important that we write net income on our worksheet. Okay, and you know also that the net income needs to go on the balance sheet. That's how we update capital. Remember, beginning capital plus net income less drawings equals our updated capital. So in effect, this balance sheet is getting updated. In this case, it's a net income because I know my revenue is bigger than my expense, and it's going to go here. When it is a net income, the balancing figure also goes on the credit side of the balance sheet. And this makes sense to me because net income increases owner's equity, and when you increase owner's equity, you credit it. So that's why it goes here. Also, to make your balance sheet balance, you need to add these two numbers together to get the same numbers we had in the debit side. Okay, so when you have a net income, it's going to go in the debit column of the income statement and the credit column of the balance sheet. However, if you have a net loss, the expenses are going to be greater than your revenues. And therefore, when you subtract these two, this number will be bigger than this one. You have to put it on the smaller side, remember? So it's going to end up here. And also a net loss is a decreased owner's equity, so you're going to end up putting it in this column. So if your balancing figures end up there and there, it's a net income. If they end up here and here, it's a net loss. Okay, the last really important piece that we need to take a look at is where our ruled lines go. You'll notice there is a ruled line here on our trial balance, and there's a double ruled line here. There's two. This single ruled line goes all the way across, and then we have two spaces, 1, 2, between the next single ruled line which goes across our income statement and our balance sheet. Finally, this is a double ruled line here. This is 2 lines, okay, and it goes all the way across to indicate a final total. These two numbers equal, and these two numbers equal. Don't forget this last step. When you add your balancing figure here, you put the total. When you add your balancing figure here, you put the total, and then you move this total down, and you move this total down. That's the final step, and draw your lines. So, single ruled line, single ruled line. Double ruled line, double ruled line. Okay, so that's it for now. You should be able to prepare a worksheet